Well, you see my football shirt, but I'm talking basketball, NBA GOAT analysis tips. It's just talking who the greatest of all time basketball player is fun. It's a good, interesting analysis because the truth is that you can always see something new that you missed, and that especially when you go from generation to generation, that you realize they played this style then or whatever, or we didn't think about the fact that they played this position, or you find some stats that you never heard of that they don't talk about much. An interesting one recently is when Michael Jordan played point guard. I saw that come up. And then I heard Gary Payton talk about, he's one of the best defenders in history. He used to play for Seattle Supersonics, and he's one of the commentators for sports now, for I guess all sports, but basketball. He mentions that John Stockton, a guy who I think is really good, is I mean, he could be debated as one of the best point guards. Even they never debate him over Magic, but based on what Gary Payton just said, you could put him in that debate because it's a whole different angle of his efficiency. So he says John Stockton is harder to guard than Michael Jordan, and for this reason, because I forget how many feet he said, but John Stockton, he'd play out wide, like similar to Steph Curry. So he had to cover more floor space, chase him around more. John Stockton always stayed on the run. He played off the ball and kept him on the run. But then he had a high percentage shot. He'd shoot 3 pointers, had tons of assists. He had rebounds. He had steals, leading steals in the league history actually. So he was harder to cover than Michael Jordan because he covered more ground, and Jordan played in a smaller space. The thing that's good about Jordan is he could shoot almost anywhere in a small space, and you still couldn't block him. So some players spread it out and keep you on the run, so they can get open and just spread the floor, and that's good. And John Stockton in his position at point guard, that's a good thing. So he's technically an underrated player. He had Karl Malone. I'm not going to say he didn't have anybody else, but imagine John Stockton being a key player on the All-Star team for the USA with Jordan. Well, if you could do an all-time, Jordan, LeBron, Kevin Durant, maybe Larry Bird, David Robinson, Tim Duncan. Imagine him on a team like that, based on what Gary Payton said about his game, spreading the floor similar to Steph Curry, but he's one of the best defensive players of all time, John Stockton. And he has maybe a higher percentage shot than Steph Curry, but he didn't shoot much. He kept the shots limited and spread the ball around. So if you got that on a team with all these guys like Jordan, LeBron, Kevin Durant, he's a perfect fit for them. I know Magic, he'll spread the ball around too, but he's not, and he can shoot some threes, believe it or not. But Stockton had a very high percentage from the 3-point line. So pretty consistently. So you look back at Wilt Chamberlain. So I'm making just a few notes on a few key players. This won't be a long video. Wilt Chamberlain. He's tough, like Shaquille O'Neal, believe it or not. Tougher, maybe. Probably tougher. He benched more or as much. He was benching as much as the strongest man in the world back then, or something. I heard, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think he was compared to him, but anyway, Wilt Chamberlain was super strong. He looked kind of like he had a thin build but muscular, and he was 7'2", I think, and he could run the floor. But he's the guy that scored 100 points. Now, he played against Kareem. He didn't play against nobody. He played against Bill Russell. But Kareem puts it more into perspective because Kareem played for many years, up through Larry Bird's years, and I forget who retired first. But he was competitive through all those teams. So it's not true that they didn't play against tough competition back in Wilt Chamberlain's day. So you got, in some ways it was tougher because they had a smaller league. So it's more like all-star teams. In other words, we've spread our talent around. Some of our talent's gone to Europe. nowadays. So we do have there's more talent, because it's a bigger. We've had we've had more school and more population playing basketball than ever, but it's spread out. So back then it was more concentrated. So it was harder to make the cut. You had better. You had it was almost like playing all-star teams. You know, so that's why they had tough competition. That's one analysis. I'm not saying I studied all the stats on that, but think about that. That's something for the people with all the stats to analyze, and for people to think about when they talk about the GOAT debate. So I will say, but what Wilt Chamberlain did, he played a finesse game. He chose to be finesse and not power through like Shaquille O'Neal did. But Wilt Chamberlain had the 100-point game. He would have 50-point games. He'd have 30-something rebounds, 40. I think he had 40-something. I forget now. But, this is just a briefing. Didn't review all this stuff. I just realized these new things recently. But so when it comes to the GOAT debate, some people are starting to realize you can make a case for each player. Like you can make a case for LeBron over Jordan. You can make a case for Jordan over LeBron. I can make both cases. But they play two different roles, two different positions. So now I could say that what if Jordan played LeBron's position his whole career? Would he be better than LeBron at LeBron's position? It's possible, but not at the forward part, not at the power forward. Not at the power forward, but at the small forward. Not small forward, but I mean being a point guard, like a point forward, point. What if he was point shooting guard? Played it that way. Evidence shows he might have been better than LeBron on that. And if he was shooting more threes, and he could shoot threes. So he just didn't do it. That wasn't his game. But it might have been if he had been point guard. He might have wanted to spread the floor more if he was playing point guard. And he did play point guard. And he was scaring the league. He was doing really well at point guard. And then they added Pippen or something and moved him back to shooting guard. It may have been before that. They had put him back at shooting guard, but he was playing like the best of all time at point guard. Jordan was for a while, and so, but LeBron played a certain role his whole career. Now you can make a case, by the way, for LeBron being the GOAT in one factor, in one sense, but as far as having the best peak, Jordan's maybe the GOAT, pretty clearly the GOAT at having a peak. But as far as having the best career for the most consistency at the top for the longest period of time, that's LeBron. I mean, at this point, nobody beats LeBron on that. If you grade it by that, if you grade who's had the longest career, been the most consistent at the top, staying at the top of their game and at the top of the league, being the best in the league for the longest period of time and just stayed consistent, that's LeBron. And so the other part where LeBron fits into it is, this is not about just Jordan and LeBron, by the way, because I still say, what about Wilt Chamberlain? What about, I want to mention an underrated guy. We always overlook, even I forget to put him on my all-star team sometimes, but it's debatable. Chris Paul. He's an underrated point guard. He's a GOAT. I mean, but did John Stockton might have him beat, I guess. On the ratings, he usually is up there, but because of making it to the championship so many times, they didn't win, but he made it to the championships. They didn't beat Jordan. So you got, Wilt Chamberlain. Now, Tim Duncan's gone up on my radar because of his defensive rating. I didn't realize he was so highly rated on defense. One of the highest ratings of all time, him and David Robinson. So, that puts, when I see those kind of ratings, that just automatically boosts them up higher to me. And, Shaq's not up that high. He's up okay, but not that high. And let's see. So, but you can't deny Shaq all the way, because he did have that power game that nobody could stop, in the lane. So he had that, but he was inconsistent, didn't stay in shape. But he was good in the playoffs. In the regular season, he was a little lackadaisical, apparently. Not completely lackadaisical, but just he saved most of his stuff for the playoffs. So, and he wasn't disciplined about his diet. That's why Kobe had a problem with him a little bit. He was frustrated by him not staying in shape and all that. So you have, who else do I want to put in this list? And I'm going to make another point about LeBron in this thing. So you got LeBron. as a point guard, the reason I like LeBron is because I just like his role that he's playing the team game. Jordan's the shooter, but he was the designated shooter and had a high percentage. You could count on him. So that does help your team to be somebody that you can go to and count on and keep a consistent shooting percentage, because there is team ball has so many advantages like LeBron plays, but see, the team did center around Jordan, so they still played team ball, but you had it was planned that way. But you have some people who say ball he's only good because he's a ball hog. Well, yeah, he got a lot of numbers because he was supposed to be the ball hog, and he wanted to be, but he wasn't as much a ball hog as Kobe Bryant. But he's still ball hog, but he shot high percentage. His percentage stayed up there. So if you spread the ball around to the team, one shooter might have a cold day. One player on your team. So there's an advantage to doing that. But on the other hand, if you play team ball and spread it around, extreme team ball or super team ball, like LeBron, and you keep the ball spread around, there's some strengths to that too. So it could be a day the team's cold, but you can have, I don't know what's choking me, but you have, but if you get hot, if your team gets hot, the whole team gets hot just about. And when you're playing team ball, and then you're going to make a surge. I've seen it happen where they back down by 10 and they go up by 20 real quick. So it went on a 30-point surge, That happens when you play team ball. And so I guess I don't want to give any secret tips here to any teams that play against my teams, but I'm doing it. No, I'm not. Well, you rely on your defense. If you have a good defensive team and then you're playing team ball like they do on offense, you're in pretty good shape. Some kind of dust is getting in my mouth. So you got, I'm going to finish this with my last few points because I don't have time. But you have, so I'd say LeBron, for the top notch spots, you got LeBron, Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, maybe Kareem. His defense isn't as good as, even Wilt's not considered as high up as Bill Russell on defense. And Bill Russell's not as high up as David Robinson and Tim Duncan on defense. So, and all those guys can play offense. Something special about Bill Russell, he can pass the ball very well. He strategizes. He would have his team. He'd kind of be a team, a court coach on the court coach, and he would have teams run. They would, he'd plan to have a run game and wear a team down. And so then for a while, he had Bob Cousy and other players. He wasn't by himself. Now, Wilt Chamberlain he didn't have great teams that I'm aware of. I mean, so that'd be a longer study, but I don't know of any of his teammates being that good. Now, obviously, they don't talk much about Bill Russell's teammates, but he had some pretty good teammates. So, but still, both of those guys are in the debate. Bill Russell doesn't usually go to the top because he didn't score a lot. He was just an average scorer on the stats. So that was maybe his choice to do that. But he's not always argued at the top except because of his championships and then his defense too. But his rebounding, his defense. So you have him. You got. I still would put David Robinson in there. You could debate Tim Duncan even. So people that we could debate even and put in the GOAT debate to decide why there's some points that get left out about these guys that could knock them up a notch, And even Larry Bird could go in there. I don't mean even Larry. Larry's defense is underrated. When you go to the rating points system they have, he's near the top on defense. That boosts Larry Bird way up for me. Larry Bird's similar to Jordan in that he can shoot anywhere there's something about the way he knows how to shoot quick release or make a move here, and you can't block his shots, and he's going to make the basket. So Jordan can do that because he's a high flyer and can do this. He's fast, but Larry Bird was able to do those things, and he's 6'9", I think. So then you have, I'd like to once again mention Chris Paul could be up there closer. John Stockton should definitely could be reevaluated many times. All these players can be reevaluated for where they fit on the list, because I think you could always keep going and reevaluating, and I might switch my list and say, wait a minute, this guy should be 3, not, and then this one 4, I think. Hakeem Olajuwon's in there, obviously. He played soccer and was new at basketball, so he improved throughout his career and hit his peak. And I don't know where you measure him at his peak, but part of the reason he would be rated higher, though, if he was already experienced basketball player, if he was already experienced when he came into the league. But obviously, he had great physical talent for that. Then you have, let's see, Bill Walton. I don't know if he makes that high on the list, but he was a unique defensive player. Gets overlooked for that. And let's see, who am I forgetting? I mean, there's quite a few players. I think I'm like, why aren't we talking about them more? Besides Pippen, they don't talk about Pippen enough with Jordan, right? Jordan doesn't win without Pippen, and Pippen was the best player in the league the year Jordan was out. So he was the best scorer and all that. He led his team. They didn't quite make it, but they made it close without Jordan. So, but you were going against Hakeem Olajuwon with Clyde Drexler at that point. They had just, they had joined up, and that, they won the championship, actually. And that was a team. I don't know who knocked Pippen out of the playoffs that year, but if it was them, you could see why he might have made it without that team. Who knows? But I'm not sure about that. So you got Tim Duncan and David Robinson, who knocked off Kobe and Shaq, and they don't talk about that. So there's a lot of stuff we don't talk about. So the GOAT debate, it's an interesting one, but like the greatest athlete of all time was Samson in the Bible, bar none. And now I don't know about how he'd do in basketball, but he was definitely the strongest person in history that we know about. And but it was a true miracle, though. God gave him that talent and gift, and it for whatever, I can't think of reasons. I guess I don't. You know what? I can't even. I've thought about it a few times, but I haven't come up with a conclusion as to what the purpose of that story is. But he was a strong man who had a weakness. A woman ruined him. But he had a redemption in the end of his life and took down a whole city. He's beat up 2,000 men, killed 2,000 men that all came to attack him in a war with a jawbone of a donkey. Now, I forget, I'm pretty sure it was 2,000, but it was a large number like that, right? There's no athlete that can do that we've ever seen in modern times. But his strength was in his hair. When he cut his hair, it sounds like a fairy tale, right? But I trust that it's a true story. And it is a true story, but the fact that it's a miracle, according to history, it's a true story. I mean, but I trust it's a true story because I believe in the Bible. I do believe in miracles. I don't think that we do miracles today so much. I don't think God has us do miracles today because he did miracles to prove who he was back then. He finalized proving who he was when Jesus came, and there's no need to prove it anymore. It's up to us to trust it now. So you got the whole story of world history, and God showed himself in different ways. But I'm going to have to go ahead and end this real quick, and I'll say I did want to mention a few more names. I didn't mean to cut that story short, but I'm low on time. But you have, here's a few names. Dominique Wilkins. I'm like, how come he's not talked more about? Apparently his defense wasn't the best, but his offense was. I mean, his offense, we could talk a lot more about Dominique. He's right there. If Jordan didn't come along, Dominique would have been the guy we're always talking about still, maybe. But he didn't win, but he didn't have Pippen. Imagine if Dominique had Pippen. He didn't win championships like Jordan, but he didn't have Pippen. But he almost won when Moses Malone came to his team. Here's a person that goes up the list for me. Has gone up the list when I studied the defensive ratings, and he is one of the best defensive players of all time, and I didn't realize that. Dr. J, Julius Erving. So I don't know how he did his outside shooting percentages were and all, but he's one of the better offensive players, and now he's one of the best defensive players. Above Jordan and Pippen, his ratings are higher than them on defense. So that's surprising, right? Those Jordan and Pippen are highly rated defense. They're some of the best defenders of all time, but Dr. J's defensive rating is higher than theirs, So Dr. J could be argued as one of the best. Now, he won when he had Moses Malone. So he had Moses Malone. I think that's one of the things that took him over the top to where he won one or two in a row. I forget. And then, so there's a lot of players like Gary, not Gary. Anyway, there's one player that got injured in recent times and was supposed to be maybe as good as Jordan. They would say they said that a lot about some players, and then they end up disappearing. This guy got hurt, and I can't think of his name, but he's one that he's not in that debate because he did get hurt, and that kind of hurt his career. But there was a player back in the 2000s, early 2000s, that I wish I should had reviewed my notes, but he's a small forward, and I'll skip that name just because I can't remember it. But because he's not in the top 10 or anything, he's not even in the top 20. Maybe he's close, maybe, but um, some of these players in the top 20, and I'll specifically go to another thing and try to get players that were not even in the top 20 who should be. We'll go like that, but also I hope to do that at some point. And then, even though I'm wearing a football shirt, and then at some point I'll get time to talk about football. I have not had much time to do these, and I definitely like talking sports because it's the easiest subject for me. I do other kinds of analysis, political analysis. How do we make a better world? I'm always trying to figure out how to make our world better, safer, more peaceful, more healthy. And those are tough subjects, those are tough subjects. But sports comes easy for me. It's sports analysis. I like it. I mean, in a sense, it's my break and hobby to get away from the hard thinking, the more offensive people get offended by the discussion of how to make a better world. Imagine that. But so I would say it's still Jordan. The debate versus Jordan and LeBron, Jordan LeBron against Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem and David Robinson, in my view, is way underrated. Seems like I ran across another underrated player besides Chris Paul recently. But where does Steph Curry fit in? It depends to me on his defense. He's great offense, right? So he's similar to John Stockton as far as even more so. He's harder to cover because he shoots from way long out and spreads the floor very well. But Stockton may have more assists. So I really would like to keep going with this. I'm in the mood to dig in and think of who I've forgotten. Gary Payton gets underrated. He's the guy that he's the one that reminded people recently about John Stockton. But he's underrated. But it's just once you get to a long list of really the top players, you could put Gary Payton in that list. But there's just too many top players now that have the accolades of championships and things. So there's players like Gary Payton. I think he had a championship in Miami, maybe, with Shaq and Dwayne Wade. But when he was older, I guess Gary Payton was older at the time. I'm not sure. But he had but some players that didn't have as many championships or somehow didn't make the cut, like Manu Ginobili. He could be up the list too. And he did have championships. So he wasn't, I don't know how talented his people see him as naturally, but whatever the case, he made a case for himself. To say he wasn't talented, a lot of these players aren't talented like Jordan was. But say Manu Ginobili had more skills similar to John Stockton or somebody. I haven't studied that specifically, but he was competitive, like in the top of all time. Where on that list he would fit, I'm not sure. So I know I'm forgetting somebody I want to mention before I hang up the phone here. That's figure of speech. But let me try to think of a couple of players that are in the top, and I'm not talking about all of them. I'm going to leave some out, but just a few players that you might want to reevaluate. And when I say the top 20 GOATs, I like to say, let's do the top 20 GOATs or even top 30 GOATs, because they all play different roles too and played at different times. They didn't always have Scottie Pippen. Not all these other GOATs didn't have Scottie Pippen. No offense to Jordan. And so despite Jordan having Pippen now, I'm going to say nobody could do what Jordan was doing. Not even Vince Carter. But if you want a comparison, you could say Vince Carter or Dr. J. Nobody could do quite the things Jordan did or how he did it. And he was a good shooter. and a good defensive player, and he had the drive, and he was smart. By the way, we don't talk about that, but he was a smart player, and so Jordan, and he could have played point guard. That what he couldn't do that LeBron can do is as well as LeBron is power forward. He could probably play small forward almost as well, except that he's just not as big as LeBron. So there are some big small forwards, so that could be a small factor in affecting his game. Obviously, Jordan has long hand. Or I don't know how long his arms are. He has big hands, so he could bigger than average in the NBA. And his hand could palm the ball so easily that he could do trick moves with that. I mean, so really he had a lot of skills. So you got those guys are near the top: Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem, David Robinson. Some people could put Moses Malone in there. And there's other centers I forget, but Clyde Drexler is underrated. Dwayne Wade's underrated. Um, Kobe Bryant, I haven't mentioned this. I hadn't even mentioned him. He's an automatic assumption in there. The one knock I have on Kobe Bryant is his shooting percentage was not up as high as Larry Bird, Kevin Durant, Jordan, LeBron, any of those guys. It wasn't as high as Dwayne Wade at the end. Now, Dwayne Wade improved his, even while he had the bad knees. And he actually improved his shooting percentage while LeBron was there. He just didn't get a ton of playing time during the season. So people knock LeBron for playing with Bosh and Wade, but Bosh ended up, that's part of the reason probably LeBron left. I don't know. No, he left because he wanted to go back to Cleveland to play with Kyrie, I guess, partly. But also Bosh had the heart aneurysm, blood clot in his heart. And, but the whole time there, LeBron was there the whole time. Dwayne Wade had the knee, degenerative knee issue. And so that's not like playing with a healthy Scottie Pippen. That's not even like playing with a healthy Dwayne Wade. But Dwayne Wade did a good job of managing that. But let's be real, he didn't play a lot. So that could have helped them in the playoffs if he was able to play more. And I'm guessing it was really strange when Dwayne Wade went to Cleveland, how he left real quiet, no explanation and all that. And I guess it was his knees. Maybe behind the scenes, they knew he couldn't play like he was with his knees and all that. So even though he had gotten some kind of control of the situation, his knees weren't better. It's a degenerative issue, apparently. So I don't know how that is now. Maybe it did get somewhat better. But LeBron wasn't playing with a healthy Wade. It's not, he never played with a healthy Wade. Chris Bosh, I don't want to say he's overrated, but yeah, I'd say they like to overrate any player LeBron plays with. They used to do that. So Bosh is good. LeBron had Birdman. I would have liked to see LeBron go play with Dirk Nowitzki. Sorry, I'm choking. Dirk Nowitzki. And or Tim Duncan. Talk about, that's like playing with Shaq. It's like how Kobe teamed up with Shaq. It's like, now somebody would say LeBron had Shaq. Shaq was not healthy. I think Shaq got injured while he was there first, for one thing, but he was already down at the end of his career. He wasn't himself anymore. But he definitely wasn't once he got injured there. So, but Tim Duncan, if LeBron played with Tim Duncan or Nowitzki, in my opinion, that's even better than playing with Shaq, especially for LeBron's style. So I would say Tim Duncan might be better than playing with Shaq. And overall, because he does more things. Not that Shaq's not powerful. Tim Duncan's a power forward. So you can put a good center in and have a great power forward like Nowitzki or Tim Duncan, in my view, and put it above average center, and you've really that's a better game than having a good center and not having a great power forward. In my opinion, he could have played with Kevin McHale. Kevin McHale's a player who's underrated, right? He's one of the best power forwards of all time, right? So we talk about Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman's especially, she's perfect fit for LeBron's team, but he wasn't a scorer. Kevin McHale could do everything. See, Charles Barkley, he gets overlooked because he didn't play defense till the fourth quarter, I guess. sometimes. And then, but if he was known more as for defense, and if he had some better teams, he did try to do that late in his career. As much as he criticizes some people for moving, he finally moved to Houston and Phoenix from the 76ers. But Charles Barkley is really a really good offensive player. So I don't know. His defense was inconsistent like Shaq, and that makes it hard to grade him. But he's definitely could have been one of the greatest if he was more disciplined or had good teammates, or in his prime if he had like a big three or big two even. I don't know if he had a big two even. So you got Karl Malone. You have uh, who else am I overlooking? There's some other players. I guess I better cut it off though. But the point is, you could make a case for LeBron over Jordan. You can make a case for Jordan over LeBron, depending on what angle you do. But like if it was coming to 1-on-1, I would say Jordan might be better than anybody. But you don't. I can't say for sure that Jordan would beat Wilt Chamberlain in 1-on-1. Wilt Chamberlain's, he's a giant, and he's athletic like LeBron, like Jordan and LeBron. So Jordan's more athletic than both, really. But I don't know if he's more athletic than Wilt Chamberlain based on the size. When you do the ratio of size and factor everything in, Wilt Chamberlain was an athlete, man. So track and field, he was a high jumper. Could run the 400 meters. I mean, he's an athlete. That's 7'2". So you might think of him like, look at Wembyana. Is that how you say his name? The new guy, real tall guy. He's an athlete for his size, but I don't know if he was like Wilt Chamberlain. Now he's taller than Wilt, so that guy could be one of the best of all time. Wembyama. I forgot if there's an extra syllable there, but I'll just call him Wembyama for now. But he's until we look it up. He could potentially be the best of all time, barring no injuries. I'm not sure if he is athletic, but he's not quite as athletic as Wilt Chamberlain or Jordan. But maybe he can improve, and become close. More like Kevin Durant. I don't know if he's that fast. I haven't watched him that close. But you obviously can't block his shots. He can make some moves. He can go behind the back. He can do stuff, right? And he's playing smart. So, and he's only 19. But you have who's the better between? I always mention Wilt instead of Kareem. No offense to Kareem, but it's his athleticism, how many points he scored, his dominance. Wilt Chamberlain has the dominance, and why do we overlook that? We say Shaq was dominant. Wilt was more dominant than Shaq. I mean, that's where I would say the most dominant player of all time. Shaq's right in that list. I can't think of who else I'd put there. You could say Dr. J maybe, but who else? Hakeem Olajuwon. Let's see. I hadn't thought through that list in a minute, but you have so dominance, though, Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and then David Robinson's one of my most underrated player, along with John Stockton, even Larry Bird at this point, and Chris Paul, and there's a few more. So I wish I could remember him. That's killing me. I'm sorry. There's some underrated players I've run across in my studies recently, in my just following the news and all that, and I'm like, I wish we had time to give them more credit. I want to point them out sometime. And then I just didn't get to it because I'm studying politics a lot. Oh, I'm going to close out, and I'll just say, I still, just off the top of my head, without looking at a list, I still think LeBron, of course, Kevin Durant is underrated. Now, he's dealt with injuries. Imagine if he didn't have his Achilles tendon torn, that year. Man. But Kevin Durant's close up in there. And then, you could say top 5 even for Kevin Durant. You could debate him against LeBron at one point, but LeBron does more things. LeBron has more of a power game plus finesse. He's not known as a finesse guy, but he's worked on his finesse game, and they balanced it out. He uses both. He balances both. He does power and finesse. Plus he's a point guard. Plus he plays any position. So that's where he edges out Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's a scorer. But so I still got LeBron for now. I got LeBron James. I'm going to reassess this. But LeBron James, Wilt Chamberlain, and Jordan are my top three offhand. And I don't know how you can beat. I don't know how we can argue anybody better than those three guys unless I think of somebody on another date. So Larry Bird's closer up in there too than people think, and there's other ones I can mention. But my top three, just off, if I'm just thinking real fast, the top three best players of all time overall to me is I could make a case against Wilt Chamberlain, but I don't know enough to say was he a good team player. I don't know about that. That could knock him down. But as far as ability and all, it's and how they used their game overall, the standouts to me are LeBron. We'll go on. We'll go on. I don't want to say LeBron first, for sure. I'm gonna say LeBron and Jordan tie, and and then I'm also gonna say I can't give the number one spot to a center because a perimeter player does more. They manage the game more. They pass the ball around. They spread the ball around. They do all that. So when it comes to GOAT, I almost would like to divide them between baseline players and perimeter players. And the GOAT baseline players, I would say is Wilt Chamberlain. But it's a debate between him, uh, Bill Russell, Kareem, Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, and mainly those guys. There's probably a few others, but David Robinson gets left out, and that's 100%. And Tim Duncan could go in there, but David Robinson gets left out, and that's wrong, way wrong, way wrong. That's discrimination. Bottom line, I mean, he's way, 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 way better than people have given him credit for, and better than some of those players. I think. It's a lot of times I pick David Robinson as my GOAT, baseline GOAT. So because he can do more than Wilt Chamberlain even as far as outside shooting and stuff. And he can dribble like a point guard. I mean, come on. So, and he's good top defensive player. His ratings on defense are right there with Tim Duncan's, right at the top. Both of them are the top rated of top centers. They have the highest defensive ratings of all the best centers ever. So there are some centers that aren't known for their full game. That there's one or two, Will Gerd or somebody, I forget. But some names that aren't well known. There's a couple of top defensive players that were known just for the defense. They're right there. There maybe two players, but other than that is Tim Duncan and David Robinson. So I would really put them in a different bracket. But the standout names of being the best of all time to me are three that stand out. That's LeBron, Jordan, and Wilt Chamberlain. And I can make LeBron and Jordan. I can make a case for LeBron because he played point guard a lot, and I can make a case for Jordan being the guy I would think would win one-on-one, but I can't say he'd beat Wilt Chamberlain one-on-one because of the height advantage and stuff. But because Wilt's one player that could block Jordan, right? So that's a different game when you're playing somebody that tall and they're athletic. So if Jordan's over there shooting 3-pointers and making them all day, he's going to win and he's going to beat Wilt Chamberlain. But if it comes down to an inside game, how do you beat Wilt Chamberlain, even if you're Jordan? So you can even make that argument with Jordan against LeBron. But LeBron's not known for his one-on-one game. Jordan is. So I would say one-on-one Jordan might be the best. And then LeBron would do well. LeBron might not even be second best, on one-on-one. But as far as the team management goes in team games, LeBron's had the most consistency. So I could argue him the GOAT that way. Jordan, I could argue the GOAT as far as having the highest peak and winning 6 in a row. Well, technically 6 in a row, but taking 2 years off in the middle of that. So he won 3 in a row and then 3 in a row. Didn't lose any in between. So but he did it with Pippen. So I don't know. That's a debate. I'm back and forth on LeBron and Jordan. And I lean LeBron because I like the point guard. I like a point guard, right? And he preferred point guard. Jordan could play point guard, but that wasn't his preference either. Even though he played the other role, the shooting, it was his preference to play that role, I think. So, but those are my top three in no order, except I do put the center position in a different bracket than the perimeter players. So who would be my number 2 center? It might be David Robinson. I mean, Kareem's good, but I like defense, man. Matter of fact, David Robinson goes above Wilt Chamberlain on defense, supposedly. I say supposedly because look at how many rebounds and blocks Wilt Chamberlain had. He has them all. He has everybody beat on that. But something about the defensive ratings looks at effectiveness somehow. The overall effectiveness on defense, the formula they have. David Robinson scores higher, and so does Tim Duncan. So I actually, after reading that too, I take Tim Duncan up, and I want to study his game more in the future. I'm going to end on that. Adios. It's at 40 minutes. I hope this downloads like it should.